Welcome to Integrated Health Mastery, the leading global resource for cutting-edge information dedicated to preventing, healing, and reversing disease. To join thousands of global members and access empowering resources for overcoming disease, visit integratedhealthmastery.com for membership details. And now, Jean Swan, founding partner of Integrated Health International, editor-in-chief of Integrated Health Magazine, and your host for today's question and answer session.
Welcome, everyone. It's great to be back with you for our live monthly Q&A session. This is your opportunity to address your questions directly to the experts who are leading the way in removing the fear and misconceptions surrounding cancer. I want to let you know that if you're listening on the phone, you can press star 2 to talk to Jenny directly on the phone. If you're on the webcast, you can type your question into the Q&A box on the page for this program. Our guest tonight set out on a life-changing journey when she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2009. She now works with cancer patients, providing them guidance and encouragement. Jenny Hrbacek has been a registered nurse since 1990. She is the author of the new book, Cancer-Free, Are You Sure? The book is the result of Jenny's years of research into early diagnostic testing, how to reduce the risk of cancer recurrence, and how to reduce the odds of a formal diagnosis of cancer in the first place. And Jenny has generously offered to send a copy of her book to the first 3 people to submit their questions tonight, so I'll announce who those winners are a little later on. The book is getting rave reviews as one that stands alone in its category among the many, many books that have been written on cancer. It reveals information that most doctors don't volunteer to their patients in most cases. Jenny, it's so great to have you here and share your inspiring story and answer questions that are already pouring in tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with y'all.
Jenny, I love your Texas drawl, by the way. Just wanted to mention that. It's so warm and comforting. I want to ask you first about the title of the book, Cancer-Free, Are You Sure? One of the misconceptions that people have and cancer patients have, especially when they've used solely conventional treatments, is that once an oncologist tells them that they're cancer-free, that they don't have to do anything to maintain that cancer-free status. And I know that you were inspired to use this title of the book and that in your own journey, you were told you were cancer-free too soon. Can you share that story with us?
Sure, exactly. And I thought it was a great title to be cancer-free and to get that survivor title. But what I found out was that's actually not the case. And I can tell that a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But the title of the book is Cancer-Free, Are You Sure? Because people always come up to me and they'll say, oh, my wife is cancer-free or my husband's cancer-free. And I say, well, are you sure? And they'll tell me, oh, yes, we have a clean surgical margins, a clean PET scan. The tumor markers are good. Everything looks great. We're definitely cancer-free. And my next question to them would be, well, does your doctor want to see you in 6 months? And they get a blank look on their face and they say, yes. And I just say, well, you might want to make sure that your doctor is sure. So hence the title, Cancer-Free, Are You Sure? Because there's more to the story. And that's how the title came about.
Yeah, so the misconception is that once you're told you're cancer-free, that you're fine and you don't really need to worry about it any longer. But in your case, well, if you can share your journey with us and then get to that part where you were told you were cancer-free. But it starts back in 2009. You're a registered nurse. You are in the conventional medical world, and then you're diagnosed with breast cancer. What steps did you take?
Well, first of all, I will tell you, I thought I was a perfectly healthy 47-year-old female. I went to my yearly doctor checkups every year, and I would be given a clean bill of health. And finally, when all of a sudden I got this cancer diagnosis, it was like, where did this come from? I just had my checkup a year ago, and now at this checkup, I've got cancer, and I need to be rushed in for surgery and chemotherapy. And it was just, it was a little earth-shaking to get this news because I trusted that I was doing well. One of the main things that stood out to me and just hung in the back of my head was that they told me I'd had cancer for 7 to 8 years at the time of diagnosis. And I kind of thought, wow, we can put men on the moon, and we can do all these, we can email across the country, but we can't find cancer before 7 to 8 years. And I started talking to other people, and they were told they had had cancer, some for 8 to 10 to 12 years before the point of diagnosis. And that just bothered me, and I didn't know what to do with that information, but I just filed it away. I didn't know any better. I hadn't met all these great integrative people that I've now become close friends with, and I went ahead and I trusted my doctor. I went through the surgery. I had a mastectomy. It was 6 or 7 different surgeries for reconstruction, and I did 4 rounds of chemotherapy. And during this process, one of the huge decision making on my part to have the tissue removed was, like most people, when you are diagnosed with cancer, most people, they just want it out, and they want it out quickly because you think that you can just remove the tumor, because we're told that that's what doctors do. They surgically remove the tumor. And at that point, I even would pick the surgeon that could do it the fastest because I just wanted it out. But through the whole process, I kept thinking that I want to do the surgery because I don't ever want to have to deal with breast cancer again. Well, I didn't realize at that time that the only thing I did was keep the cancer from coming back in the trash can that they threw that tissue in. I didn't do anything for the rest of my body. So anyway, I finished the surgery, the reconstruction, had great success with all that, and I did 4 rounds of chemotherapy because they found 2.4 millimeter seed in one lymph node. So I went ahead and I was doing that, and as I was sitting in the chemotherapy suite, I don't know if you've seen one of these, but it's just a large room with all these lazy boy recliners, and I was sitting there, and I looked at the boy across the chair from me, and he had a recurrent brain tumor, and he's eating Nutter Butters. And then I looked at the lady across from me, and she's got some French fries and a soda, and she's on oxygen, and I'm speaking with her, and it's from the heart damage done from the adriamycin, which is the drug, a chemotherapy drug that she was receiving. Anyway, so when my doctor called me back the next week, I had decided I did not want to, there had to be more to the story. And like most people, when you get a diagnosis of cancer, there comes an entourage of casseroles and scripture books and cancer books that are brought to you, and they're delivered to you, and you have this big pile. Well, the book on the very bottom of the pile that I received from so many people who came to cheer me up and kind of help me through a tough time was one called Beating Cancer with Nutrition by Patrick Quillen. And I read that book, and I thought, dang, this book is the first one that someone brought me, and it's been on the bottom of this pile, because at this point, I know I was 7-8 months into this, and I thought, I'm going to do what this book says. I'm going to build up my immune system, and I went to the Whole Foods and different stores. I ordered online. I got everything I needed. And during this process, my oncologist would always say, any vitamins, any herbs you're taking, I would like you to make sure you let me know, because you could be they could interact with your therapy. So I went to my oncologist's office. I had this basket, and I had probably 25 different products in there. And I had me a book that was gifted to me, and I went to the Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I bought him a book. When I arrived, the nurse saw me with all this, and she says, you can't bring all this in here. I said, oh, I assure you I can. He told me anytime I take something to let him know. And I guess then she put me in a little room, and she's like, what are you going to do with this? I said, well, I'm going to show them to my oncologist. And she must have went and talked to him about it, because then he stuck his head in the door, and he said, what are you doing? You can't have all this in here. Anyway, so he finally comes in, and I explained to him, I said, look, you want to know what I'm going to do? I feel like I've got to build up my immune system. I can't just take this chemotherapy and keep going on with my life. If this happened to me once, what would keep it from happening again? Anyway, I suggested some nuts and green apples, and that did not go over very well. And then I explained to him, had he seen what was in the snack machine in the infusion suite, and he told me he was not in charge of the snack machine. Well, at that point, Jane, I said I didn't say it out loud, and I wish now that I had. Well, you were no longer in charge of me either. So I finished my last chemo, and I left, and I set on this mission to figure out what is going on, and I'm still thinking about this 7 to 8 years and these people eating this bad food that's contradictory with what I'm learning, and things were just not adding up. So there was an opportunity to help a new breast cancer support group start at our local hospital. And that night was pinnacle for me because I went to that support group, and there were about 50 ladies that showed up and a couple of men with breast cancer. And each person went around the room and introduced themselves, and they said, what their story was, what kind of cancer they had, and what their treatment was. The eye-opening moment for me was when I realized that half of those women had a recurrence, and most of them had the exact same cancer diagnosis I had, stage 1 or stage 2, and they receiving the same therapy I'd received, and they had a recurrence. It was heartbreaking. It was a sea of pink cups, pink T-shirts, pink ribbons, pink pins, wigs, pink bandanas, and these women were going through recurrence. And at that time, it's like you just have a moment. You think, my goodness, is there a target on my back? And that's what made me realize that there's something more to this. So that's the answer to that question.
Yes.
It was a long answer.
Well, you learned so much so quickly, and so to be with the oncologist who's really fighting against you doing what would actually help you, that had to be a huge revelation from someone who's a registered nurse that's worked in the conventional medical world for so many years.
Well, it was, and so then I decided to take it on my own, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to build up my immune system on my own if this guy is not going to help me. So I kind of fired him and got another oncologist. In my book, I call that oncologist number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I just set out on this journey on my own, and I went to Dallas because we're in Texas. It's about a 4-hour drive because I'd kind of had it with Houston. I had been to the biggest cancer institutions here, and seen what they had to offer, and it obviously wasn't working for quite a few people. So the next thing I did was I went down to Dallas and I met with Dr. Ray Hammond, and he's a naturopathic doctor and a chiropractor, and I'd heard that he worked with people with cancer, and I just said, hey, I'm cancer free. I just want to build up my immune system. And you can imagine the chuckle when I walked in there and said I was cancer free, but I just wanted to build up my immune system. And he said, well, can you just humor me a little bit, and let's if you can do this, it's not covered by insurance because unfortunately a lot of these healing therapies are not. If we could just verify that you are cancer-free, then we'll get right on this immune system task. So I gave the sample, and we sent my blood over to a lab called Research Genetic Cancer Center to do a circulating tumor cell count. And it's interesting, Jane, because at the same time when this was going on, my traditional tumor markers, the CA15-3 and CA27-29, had elevated, and they were higher than they were when I had the cancer, but they weren't super high, but they were going up. And so oncologist number 2, at the same time I'm doing this, says, Jenny, I think we should check a CTC test. And I'm like, okay, this is twice in a couple of weeks I've heard this CTC. What is this? And she said, we're going to check for circulating tumor cells. And I said, well, okay, if we find some, what do we do? She goes, well, we'll see where the cancer is. We'll do a PET scan, and then we'll start chemo again. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I didn't get to that support group fast enough and find out about this target on my back. Anyway, so I was working with Dr. Hammond, and so he sent his blood off first. And, Jane, it was terrible. It came back. He actually had me drive back to Dallas 4 hours because he wanted to go over the results with me. And I had 14.2 per 7.5 cc's of my blood. That's 14.2 cancer cells for every 7.5 cc's of my blood. So basically, for a visual for the listeners, is if you took a little insulin syringe, a little 1 cc syringe, and put my blood, and all of my blood in those little syringes, I had approximately 2 cancer cells in every syringe. And that's the point that I realized that even though we threw that breast tissue away and put in nice implants and I'm looking good and my hair's growing back, that I still had these circulating tumor cells that were looking for a new place to set up shop. And that was a really scary time. And to continue is then he said, well, I really need you to see your oncologist. I said, oh, my goodness. I said, I've fired 1. I'm on 2. And I said, don't you have one you can refer to me, a nice one? Because I'm just thinking there's got to be more. So he sent me to a precious man in Dallas, and he's told me I can use his name, Dr. Olivares, in Garland, Texas. And I went there, and he looked at my report from RGCC, and he says, Jenny, you need to be back on chemotherapy. And, I just thought, why would I go back to a well that didn't work the first time? It didn't work for me, so why would I do that again? I'm finally wising up. And so he told me, he said, look, I will give you 90 days to get your number down below 5, but I want you to do everything that was on this RGCC report that you got. And the report that I got didn't just give me a number of circulating tumor cells, but it gave me a list of natural substances and a percentage of efficacy. So you're not buying something and buying a supplement that in the lab didn't work for you. So I did everything on that test. I took artemisinin, I took vitamin C, IV, I took poly-MVA, I had a whole list of things. I started eating paleo, got off all grains, and in 5 months it was down to 5.5. And I will tell you, I never ever thought I would walk back into that oncologist office, but I was so proud of myself with that 5.5, and I did this without chemotherapy that I went in there waving my paper, and he was so delighted. And then in another 3 months, I had it down to 2.9. And then, of course, then I'm told my husband, I said, we have to send your blood over to Greece to see if you have any circulating tumor cells, and because you can just get a count, which I think is such an incredible test. And of course, his came back 0 because he doesn't have any tumor cells that can be extracted from the blood and that they can grow in a lab. We all have cancer cells every day, but the immune system should kill them. We shouldn't be able to harvest them and get them to grow. Then an interesting side note to the story was, when I got there with 14.2 from the RGCC lab, I thought, oh, my goodness, I have this lab slip from my oncologist in Houston to do the CTC test that the insurance pays for. I thought, I think I'm going to go do that too. So I went and I made the appointment, got my blood drawn, and that test came back, Jean, and it was 0. So you can imagine me, I'm thinking, okay, this one test says I have cancer, this doctor says I need to be on chemotherapy, and the doctor in Houston says that I'm fine, but yet my tumor markers are going up. And so when she left the room, I immediately got on the phone to call Dr. Hammond, and I said, get him on the phone. I'm in the little doctor's office. She has walked out of the room to make a phone call, and I need him to explain to me why he's telling me his report says one thing and this report says another. Well, he says, Jenny, the report that you're getting is from Cell Search. It's a company that is a subsidiary, Jameson, of Johnson & Johnson. And he said their test can only pick up metastatic cancer, which means the cancer has to have already spread to another organ. And he said, plus, you've had 4, 5, 6 IV vitamin Cs, and we've probably knocked it down low enough where they can't pick it up. So anyway, I'm waiting. She comes back in the room, and she tells me, Jenny, you're fine. You don't have cancer. I don't know why your markers are going up, but we'll just continue to watch. And I said, okay, well, just bear with me. I said, what was my circulating tumor count or my CTC when I had the known breast cancer? And she said, oh, we don't check it. And I said, well, why don't you check it now? I don't have a baseline. And she said, well, because this test will only pick up cancer once it has spread to another organ. And so she just confirmed what he had told me. And I thought, oh, my goodness. I said, so you're telling me that my test was 0 when I had the 1.9-centimeter tumor and I had cancer, and now it is 0, and you're sure I don't have cancer? And she just looked at me. Sorry, let me get a drink.
It just shows the confusing maze that people are put through. And, wow, that is just, I mean, on top of having the disease itself and having this conflicting information. So what happened after that?
Well, she told me eat cupcakes, exercise, and go take a multivitamin. Oh. And I just was like, are you kidding me? Anyway, I got my numbers down to 2.9. So then after that, I thought, okay, I've got to learn more about this, because why don't other people know about this test? If I could have had this test 3 or 4 years ago, I could have found out that I had breast cancer when my mammogram or when whatever testing I had would have still been negative. I mean, there wouldn't be enough cells clumped together to be even able to to show up on a PET scan, not enough cells to even absorb enough radioactive glucose, which is the way that they test for you with the PET scan, by injecting you with that radioactive glucose, and the cancer cells absorb it because they have more insulin receptors and it lights up. And I thought, what a blessing. So I'm kind of, I guess I don't know what I was thinking. I thought, I'm going to start going to some seminars. And I was on the internet, and I ran into a lady by the name of Annie Brandt, and she is the founder of a nonprofit organization called Best Answer for Cancer. Well, she said she was having a conference. I said, well, I'm going to come to your conference. And it happened to be in Arlington that year. So I show up at the conference. Gene, I walk in. It's a huge ballroom with tables, and there must have been 250, 300 doctors. I thought this was for the public, this seminar. And I look up at the screens, and they're very technical. They're talking about mTOR pathways and just all these different mechanisms of cancer, and it's definitely above the pay grade, of the general public. And being a nurse, I was like, wow, this is pretty in depth. The longer I stay, I realize that I am one of just a handful of people that are there that are not an integrative oncology physician. This conference was amazing because they provided lunch with organic food and clean water, and so on the breaks, the doctors would all go out and sit around these big tables of 8 or 10 chairs, and I just went and sat with them. And I started asking questions, and I talked to the guy from South Africa, and I talked to the guy from Japan, and I think that they thought that I worked for one of the doctors. So I don't know what they thought, who I was, or how I got there. But it was so much fun. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm asking about intravenous hydrogen peroxide, and anyway, so I went 3 days of this, and they had a exhibit hall just for physicians. You could not get in unless you were, had the credentials. And the way I found out about what's going on in this book is one of the exhibitors. I walked up to the table, and I was really very careful with what I would say because I didn't want them to ask me, who am I, Doctor Who or whatever. And I was a little sneaky, and I would kind of pose the question to them before they would have time to ask me where I practiced and what kind of patients I treated. So at the first table I walked up to, I said, hi, so tell me what you do. And I believe that first table was Red Drop, and they test for the thymidine kinase, which is an enzyme. And the guy said, well, we have a new cancer test, and we can find cancer years before it would show up on a mammogram, a PET scan, a PSA, a biopsy, or need these tests that people normally get. And I said, really? Because I'm still thinking 7 to 8 years, before they could find it for me. And I said, could I have your information? So I visited with them, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I wish I had known about RGCC and this Red Drop. And then I go around the room, and I hit another table, and I'm very cautious, and I say, so tell me what you do. And I believe that one was probably CA Profile. No, I'm sorry, the next one was Oncoblot. And they said, hi, well, we have a new test just approved and out, and we can find cancer years before it will show up on a mammogram, a PET scan, a PSA, or a biopsy. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, could I have some of your information? So I'm collecting information. I'm thinking, wow. Then the next, I'm going around, and I'm going to another table, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go over those to talk to those people, and I hope they don't tell me that they can find cancer years before it will show up on a mammogram, a PET scan, a PSA, or biopsy. So I walk over there, and I'm kind of, Gene, I'm kind of upset because I'm thinking, why didn't I know this information? And why isn't the public mobbing this place? Because people are dying. People are being diagnosed with one foot on a banana peel, and people are losing their mothers and their fathers and their sisters, and it's and not to mention losing the people, the suffering that these people go through, just with the diagnosis to begin with, is just something that I would want no one to go through. So anyway, I go to this next table, and I think that was Dr. Emil Shinjal. He's a precious little guy, and I said, so hi. I said, tell me, what do you do? And he tells me, well, I have this series of tests that I do called the CA Profile, and I can find cancer years before it would show up on a mammogram, a PET scan, a PSA, or a biopsy. And I said, could I have your information? I mean, I was like really bummed at this point because I thought I needed to know all of you people 5 years ago or
Well,
6 years ago.
That's the great service that you're providing in your book, Cancer Free, Are You Sure?, which will tell people how they can get a little later on. But what you've done now is taken all of this information into a book that people can read and be informed and not have to go through that long road of misinformation, and also just get regularly tested so that they're never in a position to have cancer. So that's why it's so incredible what you've done. And it's considered a great book even among people who have written cancer books because it's very unique in that you do give all of these early diagnostic tests and how to avoid a recurrence. So, Jenny, I think our listeners would really love it if you could go through what those tests are, where people can get them, if you can name some, because they'll be taking notes and wanting to find out how they can get those tests.
Sure. Well, what I'm going to say is that the book is 400 pages, so there's no way in this interview I can do all of that, but I will hit the highlights. What I do in the book is I wrote the book for myself. Basically, I wrote the book that I wish I had had years ago. I give people I have a little yard sign that says summary, and it tells you the summary of the test. I have a little money bag, and that tells you how much it costs. And if there's any chance of insurance paying for it, based on my research. I tell you, I have a little guy running, and I tell you how to get the test. I have a little time clock, and I tell you how long the test takes to get the results back. And then a little magnifying glass to tell you how they're interpreted, the results. I go over the benefits, the limitations of each test, and then I tell you my thoughts on it. And then some of the tests, I actually have a letter to the reader from one of the labs or one of the physicians that is, involved with that test. So it's really a handbook. I tell my story, and I describe first in the book what I think cancer is, because it's a very complex thing what cancer is. It's not something that you catch. I think it's a survival mechanism of the body. The cells don't want to die, so they figure out a way to live, and they just start fermenting sugar. And you can't beat cancer, even with the testing, unless you understand that there are microbes and inflammation and acidity and decreased oxygen levels and decreased energy, cellular energy, and there are chemicals that play a part and synthetic hormones that can play a part and processed foods feed in and sugar and stress and lifestyle. I just go over all of these components pretty, I think, in a way that just the normal person could understand it. And I explain what circulating tumor cells are and stem cells. And there's one type of test that you can get that will tell you that you have cancer, but you have to actually, and they'll check the tumor or the tissue, but you have to actually send a piece of the tissue from the biopsy when that's being done. And so many people are during the surgery, and that's thrown away, or it's not able to be sent. So you have to really know what kind of testing you want. And read up beforehand so you don't make a mistake and you're not able to get the tissue back. I'll go over. I have two different sections in the book because I have tests that will find cancer early, and then I talk about tests that are functional that will provide an early warning sign. And those are critical because if you can fix the problem early on, you don't ever have to get cancer. I never realized that if you're allergic to carrots and you're juicing carrots every day and you may not be getting a rash, but it can be causing a lymphocytic rise, which means that's inflammation, and that's a distraction for your immune system. So you kind of have to find what's, it's a little bit of a hunt and peck situation, but I give you a roadmap how to do it. I'll start first with the functional testing. I tell people you should really get a viral screening if you're concerned about cancer or you've had it, because if you're carrying some of these heavy viruses and they're active, there's a lot of herbal therapies that you can get. Your immune system is going to be distracted. Of course, I'm a big fan of thermography because it's non-invasive. I even think that people should get a spinal analysis because if your spine is, the nerves are compressed going to the different organs, the brain can't get the signal to those organs to operate correctly. I talk about a spectral cell analysis, which is a test where you can find out what nutrients are missing at the cellular level. I talk a little bit about pH and acid, and definitely a self-assessment of the heart. There's so many people with cancer that come up with a diagnosis, 7 or so years after a traumatic life event, and we can't overlook that aspect. Another test I have is a parasitic stool and urine test, because it's known that cancer patients have a lot of parasites. And I don't know whether the parasites come before or after, but we know that cancer patients have them. And then Dr. D'Angelo is the lab in my book that I recommend, and he helps you naturally get rid of those. So another one is the lymphocytic response analysis. That's Dr. Jaffe's test, and that will tell you if you're having things in your environment that are causing inflammation, because we know inflammation is huge with arthritis, with diabetes, with heart disease, with cancer. And unfortunately, our environment is just really high on the inflammatory factors, and we're just all bombarded daily. I talk about a hemoglobin A1C test, and that is a test, you probably know about that checks your glucose level. And we know that if you're running high glucose levels, you're feeding cancer cells, because it's the same principle of a PET scan where they inject you with radioactive glucose. They wait about 45 minutes, and then they take a picture. And the cancer cells have lit up because they ate all that sugar. If you're running high blood sugars, then that's something you want to get that number down. The hemoglobin A1C is a test that gives you an average of over the last 90 days, and that's just a good thing to have. I talk about an estrogen profile, because so many cancers, the breast and prostate and ovarian, they're hormone driven, and so we can't overlook that. Electrodermal screening is something else that can be done. A dark field microscopy, have someone to actually take a live blood cell analysis and look at your blood. C-reactive protein is an inflammatory test. You can get a biological terrain. Dental, I have a whole chapter on dental, because if you've got an infection that's kind of lingering in your mouth that you don't even really know about, there's just so much research that people that have root canals and that have dental issues have a hard time healing of cancer. And a huge part of my writing this book was I really started writing it in the first place was for the people that were going to get a recurrence, because I thought they're told they're cancer-free. They need a list of things that they can do to help repair their body, because there's obviously some things that need correction. So I start with the functional test, and then I have a whole list of tests that will actually tell you and detect cancer. And one of them was what I just talked about, was Dr. Shandall's CA Profile Plus, and that test actually has 9 different tests in it. It's actually pretty involved. Let me see if I can find it here in the book, and I can tell you some of them. Let's see real quick. Okay, he tests, I don't know if anyone knows what a PHI is, and that is just when that is positive, that's an implicating factor for metastasis or spread of cancer. He actually tested thymidine kinase, which is shows cells that are replicating fast, and cancer cells do that. So if that's high, that's a clue. The CEA is an antigen that's present in the blood with many people with cancers. It's too much for me to read to you guys. It's that chapter is quite a few pages, but
right. Well, there's so much, Jenny. Let's tell everyone now and then later how they can get your book, because I'm sure they're really going to want to delve into this. It's something that everyone should have in their library, especially considering almost 1 in 2 people are expected to have cancer in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. We should all have this book, and that way, if we know of someone or a family member who is concerned about a diagnosis or has one, this is a reference guide. So let's tell everyone how they can get a copy.
I tell people, get a copy, but don't just get it, but share it with everyone, because pass it around, because it may be that someone needs an early CDT test and you can find that lung cancer early, or you can get a Nagalase test and find that there's cancer coming, or an Oncoblot, or the red drop or the RGCC or the CA profile or the colon health screening, which you can order on Amazon. You just drop the little thing in the toilet and it will find occult blood, which is a very high warning sign of cancer. So anyway, my book is available on Amazon, and it's also as an ebook there. And then on my website, which is cancerfreeareyousure.com. And you just spell out areyousure.com. And I do have 2 new tests that I'm adding to the book. So I'm going to post those on my website for anybody who's bought one and didn't get those 2 tests.
Okay,
and they can
fantastic.
Go on and look at that. So anyway, I can really talk. I'm passionate about this, if you can't tell.
Yes, well, that's what's so wonderful about it, is that you've taken your hardship and you found a way to come through healthy, and now you're helping others. And as far as your discussion of the test, along that line, we do have a question from Linda in Tucson who's saying, I saw Jenny speak at the conference. I also bought a copy of her book. My question is, I had a breast cancer diagnosis about a year ago, and after a lumpectomy, refused any further conventional treatment. You have many great suggestions for non-invasive ways of monitoring progress, but with limited funds, I'd like to know what you would consider to be the single most important test I could do to make sure I'm on the right track. Thanks for all you do.
I would simply do the RGCC onco count, just the number. And that count is, I believe it's about 550 euros, and right now the euro is pretty similar to the dollar. And it really upsets me that all of these things cost so much money. But Linda, you're worth it, and you just have to think, okay, I'm not going to get whatever the clothes you were going to buy, or you're not going to go out to eat for 2 months, and you get the test and just make sure you don't have circulating tumor cells. If you don't have any, it is the most wonderful gift in the world to know that they couldn't find any cancer cells circulating in your blood. If they do find some, I really love these. There's so many integrative doctors around. In my book, I give you a reference to the Best Answer for Cancer website. You can find one in your area. There's just lots of options. I'm sure y'all have talked about those on this show before. But I think that would be the test I would go with first.
Yes. And then let's say, what would be your second most important one?
I would probably do an oncoblot. The reason I picked RGCC first is RGCC, they offer a bunch of several different tests, and you don't have to get the big test with the chemosensitivity and the nutrient sensitivity. You can just get the count. But the count will give you a number, and if your number is 28, you know you have to get on this immediately. If it's 2.5, that's not concerning. You just need to keep an eye on it and maybe get on some Chinese herbs or whatever your naturopathic doctor would have you do. Make sure you're detoxing and stay on the right path. With the oncoblot, that will tell you positive or negative. That is testing for the ENOX2 protein, which is only on the surface of cancer cells, and it gets swept off into the bloodstream, and they can find that in this test, and they actually can identify almost every type of cancer. I think it's 27 different types of cancer, or 21. One of those, they can actually tell you if it's breast or liver or colon cancer, but it's not going to give you, that test is not going to give you a quantity. It's not going to tell you, you just have it, we found a few of these cells, or we found a whole lot of these cells. It's going to be yes or no. So that's why I picked the other tests first.
Okay, that is great information. And we have Diane in Boston asking, I'm trying to cure TNBC without surgery, chemo, or radiation. Do you think this is possible? Do you know of any woman who has been successful in surviving TNBC without any conventional treatment?
Okay. What is TNBC, the abbreviation?
I actually don't know. Maybe, Diane, can you write in what that stands for? Because I do not know what it stands for.
I don't know. Everybody uses, I will tell you, though, I have seen so many people healed of their cancer without doing surgery and chemotherapy. The hard thing is that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person.
Right.
And I've got a doctor here in Houston, and Dr. George Alabone, and I'm so impressed with him because he is taking that RGCC test. He's looking at hormones. He is looking at every pathway to make sure that he is hitting it from all angles. I explain it this way. Think about, say you have a pond and the water is polluted and the ducks are in the pond and the ducks are looking really puny and they're not healthy. And so you get your gun out and you shoot the duck. Well, you shot the duck, but you haven't done anything to fix the terrain, to fix the water the duck is in. So you have to find someone that's going to work with you to holistically to look at all of these different different avenues, and then you can use one of these tests to monitor to make sure that that treatment is working. That's my answer.
Yes. So an integrative medical doctor who's going to combine all the best. But you have also said, yes, there are people who do not go to medical doctors and heal. However, each person is so different that they really need to be tested for their individual cancer because, as you mentioned, Jenny, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person. They may be further along. They have a different bioterrain. There are so many factors that make it such a unique individual experience that no blanket statement can be made. That's why it's so important to have an evaluation. Would you agree?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to encourage everyone that even at that conference, I'm not sure which, I guess you probably heard me in the conference in San Diego. There were so many healing testimonies that people came by and visited with me. It was so encouraging. But you can't stop. And if you go to one doctor and they're just they have a certain program and a certain protocol and they do that for everyone, I would suggest that you go down the road and get another opinion because it's got to be personalized for you. And if they're not doing the right testing to see the different things that need to be addressed, you leave one thing that should be addressed, and it can really cause a problem. And you don't have to die of cancer. It's not a necessary activity. I truly believe that the body can heal when we correct its deficiencies. And I absolutely believe in detoxing. If you don't have a sauna, listeners, get one. You get one of those little zip-up ones where your head sticks out. You can sit there and feed yourself ice chips, but get in there and sweat because our bodies are toxic, and we go from air-conditioned to air-conditioned, and, we think we sweat, but we really, especially if you're dealing with cancer, sweating is just huge.
Do you have one of those detoxing infrared saunas that you zip up?
I do.
I've seen those. We had them at the conference, and I'm just curious how those are.
Okay, but let me tell you, I was crazy at the time, and I let them take out my lymph nodes. I actually got in a knockdown, drag-out fight with my doctor, but she insisted, and she wouldn't do my port unless I let her take out these lymph nodes, which now, they came back and they're all clear. There was nothing wrong with them. So I had this little sauna, and that I bought it, I think that first conference that I went to with all those doctors that I kind of snuck in on, I bought the sauna because I got a discount because, this was wholesale to the doctors. So I bought one, brought it home, started using it, and I never had a problem. But after about 3 years of using it, I noticed my hand was getting tight. And I thought, what is going on? And I was like, Lord, what is going on with my arm? I've never had any problem with lymphedema. I did not have any radiation. And the Lord said to me, sauna. And I thought, oh, my goodness. The heat from the sauna in that arm was causing the arteries to dump fluid. And since I was missing the lymph nodes under my arm, my body could not get that fluid out. So I called a couple of lymphedema specialists, and they confirmed that. So now when I get in it, if you can picture this, I have my right arm out, and I zip it up around my neck and under my armpit. and I have absolutely no problem. But I keep my right arm out. So I suggest to anyone, if you've had lymph nodes removed, definitely don't buy the hard kind, the shell, or the little wooden ones, because you probably need to keep that part of your body cool. And I think sometimes these people selling saunas forget to tell people that because you don't want to put that stress on your body. But
that's a great point. That is a really important point. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Fortunately, yours was a portable zip-up one that you could solve the problem.
Yeah. So I put some phone books on the chair so I sit up higher so my right arm can stick out. And I put on a 30-minute TV show, and I just sit there, and I have a little shelf. I had the little guy installed next to it where I put my little fan to blow on my head. I have my ice chip. So, but it's amazing how much you sweat. But it's critical for cancer patients.
Yeah.
Critical. It's just I had an interview one time with Charlotte Gerson of the Gerson Institute, and she told me, Jenny, she goes, cancer is a disease of toxicity and deficiency. And I believe she is so right, because our bodies want to live. The cells want to live. And the cells that turn cancerous want to live. But I think that the terrain has become so toxic, or there's been some chemical mutation, and so they mutate, they start fermenting sugar for energy, they lose the control to die, and they just keep replicating. And I really believe that if you nourish the healthy cells, you can crowd those out. I've seen people do it over and over and over. It takes a lot of effort. It's not easy, and I wish it was. That's why I wrote this book, because I don't want anyone to get in the situation that I got in.
Yes, it's so helpful, really. I mean, even what you just said about the sauna, I wouldn't have imagined something like that. That's important to know.
Yes, I recommend the zip-up one for that reason. Stick your leg out. You can do it. You might look silly, but you can do it.
And we have Kathy from Naperville saying that she says, I have been diagnosed with basal cell carcinoma and squamous skin cancers. Everybody feels cut is out and it is gone. I don't understand that. How do I get accurate info to feel comfortable but stay true to myself and do everything I can to prevent more? I feel it is a warning sign for making changes, which I have done. There is very little support out there for these two skin cancers.
Right, and because it's a skin cancer, and a lot of times they do just cut them out, and they get tissue around, and they make sure they have clean margins, and they sew you up. Skin cancer, unless it's like a melanoma, those really do spread, but the basal cell, those are usually just localized. But once again, that can be caused by sun damage, but it is a signal that the body's not able to heal and detoxify and repair. So I think she's absolutely right. I don't know about, I might at some point do one of these tests just to make sure that you're cancer free. Because if your body's growing cancer on the skin, it can grow it anywhere. I have friends with melanoma that I have one friend, her husband has had it 5 or 6 times. It keeps coming back in another organ. But then I know lots of people with these little skin cancers, and they never have a problem. I think it's more with the melanoma and that's more serious. But like I said, you can certainly check for that ENOX2 protein. You can check for thymidine kinase enzyme. You can check for circulating tumor cells and have peace, because when you go to bed at night and you think you have cancer, it's just you and your pillow and the cancer when you go to bed at night. And it's hard to get that thought out of your mind. Wow, I wonder if I have cancer here, if it's somewhere else. And so if you could just get the test and find out, I think it can give you a sense of peace. And then she would know, God, I've got to really protect my skin. I put coconut oil on my skin every time I get out of the bathtub. I have a jar in the bathroom, and I just smear it on. It removes your eye makeup. It's great. You don't have to buy expensive things with chemicals in it. But definitely do something to get rid of that concern that's just hanging in the back of your head.
Jenny, what are some of the ways that you recommend people can prevent a recurrence? As you said, early in your cancer journey, you saw that the people with the same cancer that you had were having recurrences, and you set out to find a way to make that not happen. So what's some of the best advice you can give our listeners?
Well, the main thing I'm going to say is that by finding out that you still have a problem, because everyone, 99% of people after they've had cancer come out still have a problem. They just don't know it. Some people are fortunate enough to where their immune system can take care of it, but a lot are not. So if you know that, you first find out if you have a problem so that you have the motivation to make change. The people that I see have it come back have pretty much made no change because they didn't know they needed to. Their doctor didn't tell them to make any change. Their doctor didn't tell them anything about diet, and if they did, it was a little class on something that was very minor, which was not a true lifestyle change. You have to change your lifestyle. With 1 out of 2 men and 1 out of 2.5 women getting cancer, we have to own that we are sowing bad seed into our health. We are doing something that's causing it. So definitely complete lifestyle change. You've got to drink clean water. You've got to exercise. You've got to sweat. You've got to try and get rid of stress. And I don't get into the practicing part of how to heal cancer. I tell people go to cancertutor.com, follow Ty Bollinger, There are so many people that are into that genre. I'm trying to stick to my genre is finding cancer early, and because I think if you have it, you have the motivation to make change. I know people that have lung cancer and they're still smoking, but a lot of people, I think if they got a test and they saw that they had circulating tumor cells, it might give them that motivation that they needed, and it may just save their life so that they can go find a naturopathic doctor in their area, have their hormones checked, make sure that they're having a bowel movement every day. You'd be surprised how many people don't, especially these men getting prostate cancer. They're not having a bowel movement every day, and their stool is sitting right there in the colon, right next to the prostate, and they're sucking up all these toxins. The body is very intricate, and that's just an example. But definitely go see someone, and if you find out you do have a problem, start doing some of these different integrative therapies. I mean, I take IV. I did IV poly-MVA. Right now, I just take it orally. That's a product it's alpha-lipoic acid bound with palladium and the B vitamins. And what we know about cancer cells is that they have very low energy. They don't even have enough energy to produce ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is our energy pathway. And so that upcharges the cells. And I have a friend that has one of these. It's a machine that it's a pulse electromagnetic therapy, and it's a machine that was on Dr. Oz a couple of years ago. And it's just, you lay on the mat and it goes boom, 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 and it just pulses energy through you. You would be surprised what you would find. If you find out you have cancer, just put out your feelers, and you'd be surprised. There are a lot of good integrative naturopathic, even dietitians and people that will help you to get your body straightened out, because you should not grow cancer on your own if everything is working well.
You said, Jenny, that when you were a nurse and still are, but you said that there was information that doctors weren't giving you and don't usually give people. What are some of the biggest things? Well, you've named a lot of it in your journey, but what are some of the other things that doctors, for the most part, are not telling people that they need to know?
Well, first of all, I felt like the treatment they were giving me, I feel like they sold it to me as a cure. Oh, you come in, and it wasn't you can do this, you want to do this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to give you Cytoxin and Taxol, and we're going to give you this. And 98% of people do fine. Well, what they were giving me was the relative survival rate, not the actual survival rate. You want to know if 100 people take this drug, how is that going to affect their life expectancy? And then I had a mastectomy. A mastectomy is shown now not to increase life expectancy by 1 day. It has no increase in life expectancy. Just the statistics that they gave me were not, I don't think they were honest. And I made very huge decisions based on what I felt they gave me as bad information. And yes, I have to take responsibility for that. I should have known chemotherapy was not a cure, and that it really wasn't going to extend my life. And in fact, we know now that chemotherapy actually causes the cells to send out hormones and things that actually can cause cancer to grow and to come back and to be even a stronger form of it, because it knocks out 98% of it, and that 2% that chemo doesn't kill, those are the very strongest of those cancer cells. And now those grow, and you've got another field of cancer that's made out of the 2% of the strongest that you had before, and you're going to have a stronger chemotherapy, and you kill 98% of that, and you have another 2% left, and those are the real strong ones out of that second batch. And it just goes on until they have nothing more to give you. I think the whole thing with healing the body, there was no information on why I got this. It was just, well, you've got it. This is what we have to offer. Instead of, I kept saying, I think my immune system faltered. I think they got tired of hearing me say that. And in fact, one of my oncologists said to me, "Why do you ask so many questions? Most of my patients just do what I say." And I just looked at him.
They're probably not alive any longer, or won't be.
I said, "Are you kidding me? Really? People don't ask these questions." But in their defense, the only education they have when they're out of medical school is basically from the pharmaceutical gal that comes in with the kolaches carrying her little, rolling her little bag to tell them about the newest and the best drug that they have out. So they're not going to the conferences that I've now started going to. And most doctors didn't take any nutrition in school. And to their defense, when you go to a doctor, you are asking someone to give you a prescription for something. You come in with a symptom and you're asking them to give you something to fix that. And usually that's a prescription drug. Well, we don't have a prescription drug to cure cancer. And so I think many times we are going to the wrong place looking for the right answer. We need to heal the body, and sometimes drugs are necessary and very useful, but that whole healing the body part kind of gets left out. And just the fact that these doctors let me say this, Jane, if I can find this information, and I'm just a normal person with an average IQ, these doctors who have photographic memories and have been to medical school, there's no reason they can't find this information.
Right.
And I do hold them accountable for that because they're the ones that are treating us and treating our children and our mothers and our fathers. And I think that they have a responsibility to know what's out there. And I have doctors now buying my book and sending me emails and saying, oh, my goodness, I didn't know this. Can I get copies for my office? And I love to hear that. But it's sad that I had to write this book. I didn't do anything amazing. I just gathered information that wonderful scientists and labs and people that are doing this without any funding from the Komen Walk and from the American Cancer Society. These people that have put these tests together, they don't have the benefit of all those millions of dollars. They're just out there trying to do their part to help heal humanity. And
now that you've written your book and you're in this world of helping to heal humanity, what do you sense about how it's changing, how much further we need to go? I mean, it seems it's accelerating through conversations like ours and conferences and interviews online and what's available on the Internet if people know how to be diligent in what they seek out on the Internet. But what is your feeling as far as, the momentum that's been gained in having people become more informed and take more control of their health?
Well, I think it's going to have to be the wave of the future because I have friends that are in the Affordable Health Care Act, and they can't even get an appointment with the doctor that's on their card. So we're going to have to start being more responsible and taking care of ourselves because to even get the treatment that was available 2 years ago it's just not there. It's very difficult. I've heard news reports that many of the major cancer institutions they're not even approved on a lot of these new health plans. People have lost their insurance. They still, have a huge deductible or they're in a PPO instead of an HMO. I tell everyone if you're in the Affordable Health Care Act and your card says PPO, call that doctor's number on that number. There's a name and doctor that they give you on that card. See how long it takes to get an appointment. The timelines are getting longer and longer and longer because at least on the people that I've been following it with, and I just think we're going to have to be more responsible. Our world is so fast paced and it's so easy to pick up processed food. We're going to have to find the time to try and eat healthy. It's not easy. It takes a little more time, but at least you'll be living.
It's not optional anymore. It's mandatory if you want to live.
Pretty much. I spoke to a group this morning, and I told them, I said, I know y'all are thinking, oh, my goodness, we have a talk on cancer. I'm like, but sticking your head in the sand and ignoring the situation will not make this go away. Because I spoke to 20 men. I said, half of you in this room will have cancer. And they just looked at me. And
I know. Most people don't realize those statistics.
They do not, and it's growing. And And to be honest, I think the statistics are a little bit. Even the cancer death statistics, I think they are manipulated because if you live one day past 5 years, you're considered cured, and a lot of people die from the side effects of the treatment, and it doesn't go down as a cancer death. I really think cancer is above heart disease, but it doesn't really matter. My friends are dying, and I'm watching it, and I've watched it for the last few years, and I wish so much that I had found this information, or that any one of these the third oncologist knew about the RGCC test, to just check for circulating tumor cells. And that, I truly believe, Jean, that test saved my life. I do not think I would be here today.
Wow.
Because I would have just been going to my regular doctor. They put me on what I call the Wait, Watch, and Wonder program. They wait and watch, and I wonder, I hope they got it all. And then all of a sudden they would tell me, okay, now it's here, and we need to go and do more chemotherapy. And we know how that cycle ends. It usually doesn't end very well. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's going to, we have to make change.
And we have John. Yes, we have John from San Jose saying, what kind of green juicing and diet do you recommend? Now, of course, as we said earlier, everyone's an individual, but do you do green juicing? What kind of greens? What kind of?
Oh my gosh, I love green juice. If you asked the right question. I love green juice. And I know a lot of doctors will say make a smoothie because they want you to have the fiber, but I do both. I have kale and cucumber and celery. I always put a green apple because green apples are one of the lowest glycemic on the sugar index. Green apples, berries, and cherries. So I always put a green apple and a lemon in whatever and then whatever kind of greens I can find. And actually, I can just feel the energy going in my cells. And then I love to do a smoothie with some frozen cherries, and I'll put broccoli and spinach, or broccoli and some greens, and a tablespoon of flaxseed oil. And I have I take Weltrians, and they have a whey protein that's got all the casein removed, and I'll put a couple of scoops of that. And I'm in heaven. It makes me feel good. And I know it takes time, but we have Whole Foods out here, and I'll just run in and grab a juice. I try and get a juice every other day. If not, I have a Vitamix, and I just use that, and I put my fresh vegetables with some fruit and blend it up. And I used to cheat and put some raw honey in it, but I've gotten to where I don't even need that anymore. But it's critical. And then I take some green capsules. I take 2-3 times a day with each meal because there's no way I can get enough vegetables in. And even if I was to eat enough vegetables to get my liver to convert the vitamin A out of that carrot, with all the chemotherapy that I've had, it's probably not working that well. So I take some green capsules that have like 40, 50 different vegetables in it, just to supplement. And I know it's a pain to do, but I think it's important. The body cannot work without proper nutrition. You can't birth healthy new cells unless it has to build, the body has the building blocks. I think it's amazing that people do as well as they do with the stuff that we eat. The body can hold on for a long time before it breaks down. And it will repair. But it definitely takes effort. But those are my 2 juice and smoothie recipes that I do, and I highly recommend everybody get you a blender and or one of those NutriBullets. I don't have one. I have a friend that has it, and that works good. They're relatively affordable. So,
yes, I have the Vitamix and the NutriBullet, which is very quick and easy. And then the cup, you just bring it with you if you're leaving. So it's phenomenal. Yeah, so those tips are for whether you've had cancer, never had cancer, just everyone. I mean, not only does it flood your body with nutrition, but it's convenient and quick, and everyone's looking for something quick. So rather than grabbing a quick carbohydrate, why don't you just zap a drink in a NutriBullet?
Okay, Jean, with that, let me tell you about my favorite carb substitute recipe. So easy, guys. When you have cancer, they say don't eat bread. It breaks down to sugar. Take 1 banana and mash it up, add 2 eggs and whip it together, a little pinch of sea salt and some cinnamon, and then put your organic butter in your skillet and make little mini pancakes. I even put some pecans in mine, chopped pecans. It's fabulous. And the only sugar you're having is that little bit of mashed banana, and you've got the egg for your protein that you need to birth healthy cells in the morning. That I tell everybody to make those, and they love them.
Wow, that sounds delicious. I've never heard of a recipe like that.
And it actually tastes like a pancake that's made with grain, because we know the grains break down to sugar, but it's just 1 regular banana and 2 eggs, and you whip it up with a fork. And I add my own little thing. I add some cinnamon and sea salt and some chopped pecans. And then I am a believer in real organic butter. I don't buy anything that doesn't melt at 98.6 degrees and put in my body.
Right.
And all of these, if it says low fat, I say put it back.
Yes, because of the fake substitutes that are put in there are worse than And the fats are good for us, as we know, certain ones, especially if it's organic dairy.
Yes, so important. And, I just tell everybody, I'm trying to stay away from the treatment aspect, but I can definitely tell you how to find out if you really are cancer-free. But I don't want to say the doctors are lying to people, but they know they're not cancer-free because they want to keep checking them every 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So they know there's a problem, and we have the tools out here to find it coming really early and to see a recurrence coming early and to be able to get into it, quicker. I tell some people will say to me, Jenny, nobody wants to know when they have cancer. I'm like, wait a minute. We all go for our PSA and our mammogram. And then the first thing I promise you, or the second thing that a patient will ask when they are told they have cancer, is they will ask, how bad is it? And wouldn't it be wonderful to say we found it, but it's not even showing up on the PET scan yet?
Yes.
That's because we know that outcomes are so much better the earlier it's found. And I don't care that someone gets an oncoblot test and they find out they've got cancer and they run down and they validate it and they call me and they say, I do not. I'm going to say, I understand that they can't see it yet. I'll explain to them how many cells it takes for it to show up. But I'm telling you, you've just been given a gift, because so many people are able to convert those tests back to being negative just by doing lifestyle change.
Yes, absolutely. That is so wonderful. And we have Glenn in Raymond asking if you've been cleared of squamous cell carcinoma and wanted to test to make sure, what test would you have done?
These skin cancers, a lot of times they don't metastasize, but, you can always just do an oncoblot test and see, or get the book. And the thing about the book is that they're all different price ranges, and one test might not be in your budget. So look at it and read each test and look and see which one you think fits best for you, because some of them, can be $600. I have one test in here that's, like $55. And then another one that's $297. And you really have to look and see about which type of cancer you have and what your budget is, because that's partly why I didn't just say do this test. I want people to have options, and I don't want anyone to be denied care or to be denied testing because of a financial problem. So I put all the tests that I can find available in here, and I tell you how much they cost.
That is so helpful, because you can mention all the tests, but then people would have to be on the phone for days asking how much the test is, you've saved so much work for people by doing that, because then they can just go right to the one that's best for them with their budget.
Right. It is, and it is expensive. It's expensive to eat good, but I will tell you, stop buying those boxes of Cheerios and those boxes of cereal, and you can save a lot of money and put that into the produce section or into some clean, organic meat or chicken. The processed foods are really just taking a huge hunk of our budget. I don't think we realize it. I tell people, don't even bother buying a juice that comes in a jar. It's pasteurized. It's dead. It's sugar. You're wasting your money.
Yeah.
Put it into something that's going to sow health into your life. I didn't know. I love some of those brands of that orange juice. I thought it was, not from concentrate, but it was still pasteurized and dead.
And shuts down your immune system because of all the sugar that runs through your body. I know everyone thinks it's a healthy thing, but it shuts down your immune system because of the amount of sugar that's flooding in your body.
Right, and there's no life in it. It's been heated and pasteurized so that it won't grow bacteria, and it can sit on the shelf. And you're better to eat the orange, and you can buy a bag of oranges, a bunch of oranges for what one of those jars cost, and at least the oranges are going to be healthy for you.
Exactly. So it's a way of just changing your lifestyle, and when your life's at stake, you'll do it. And before that, though, more importantly, if people do that, they can't look at it as spending more money now, because they're saving money from medical expenses they won't have later.
Well, that's so true, because people tell me, I can't afford to get tested. Well, let me tell you, one diagnosis of cancer can financially wipe you out. If you've got a deductible and copays and time off work and all the pain and suffering, it's worth something. I'm a nurse, and I love to start IVs and give injections. I don't know why. It's a strange thing. Anyway, maybe that's why I'm a nurse. Until those needles were pointed at me, oh my goodness, I have a whole different perspective. I mean, I just cringe when I see someone coming at me with a needle now because I've been stuck so many times.
You don't do nursing anymore, Jenny?
No, I consult with people on nutrition, and then I started writing this book, and you'd be surprised how my phone rings.
Yes.
But there's so many people out there that that are just, they're looking for help, and they don't know where to start.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you're providing such a service, and you have so much passion for it, and it's needed in the world. The book is Cancer Free, Are You Sure? By Jenny, and I'm going to, okay, here we go. Jenny Hrbacek.
Very good.
I wanted to pronounce that correctly, Jenny. It's a tough one with the H and then the R. So everyone can get that book, and we do have, and Jenny, let's let everyone know what your website is.
Okay, it's www.cancerfreeareyousure.com.
Okay, and so people can go to Jenny's website, and she has a few more tests she's added on there if you have a current copy of the book. And I want to let you know that the winners who will be receiving a free copy of Jenny's book, the first three to submit questions tonight were Kathy Mortensen in Naperville, Linda Vlamikis in Tucson, and Diane in Boston. If you're still listening, all three of you, please email Jenny at jenny@cancerfreeareyousure.com and send her your address. So again, that's Diane in Boston, Linda Vlamikis in Tucson, Kathy Mortensen in Naperville. Email Jenny at jenny@cancerfreeareyousure.com. Send Jenny your address and you'll receive the book. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep these email addresses and send them to Jenny so that if she doesn't hear from you, she can reach out to you because you did win a book. Thank you, Jenny, so much for being generous and having these winners take home this wonderful book. Again, Cancer Free, Are You Sure? Something everyone should have in their library. It does so much of the research that Jenny has spent years doing that now we don't have to do for our family or loved ones. We have the information right in our hands. So thanks, Jenny, for that. Thanks for sharing your time and answering questions and for the passion that you're bringing to helping people understand their options before a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, you are so very welcome, and I wish I could do more, but it's a start, finding out that you have it early and getting after it, and I just think that's the way we're going to win this battle.
Absolutely, and you are helping in the win in the battle. Thank you, Jenny, again so much. I want to thank everyone for listening. Those of you who submitted questions, we appreciate it. Many of you have asked where you can hear the program that I created, The Wisdom Show. Go to thewisdomshow.com. Many of you are listeners, and then others have asked me about it, or you can send me a message at jean@thewisdomshow.com. We thank all of you. We thank Jenny for being with us, and we look forward to joining you next month for our time together in our Spotlight program on June 3rd.
For joining us at Integrated Health Mastery. To connect with thousands of global members and access empowering information to prevent, heal, and reverse disease, visit integratedhealthmastery.com for membership details.